I would much rather have moderate sales with a high profit margin and a raving fan base instead of high sales that can't scale. A high margin product makes it much easier to scale because you have more money to spend on advertising or rolling out second products. One of my friends, Drew Canoli, started a juice company called Organifi. There were already a ton of juice powders on the market, but Drew went with a premium pricing strategy. Instead of selling for $19 or $29 like his competitors did, he charged $70 for his 30-day supply. That gave him the flexibility to create an amazing product, and it gave him the profit margin to advertise it to new customers. Organifi charges 2 or 3 times as much as competitors and outsells most of them. If he had worried about competitors, they would have been struggling to sell a $29 product and wondering why it couldn't generate sales, even though its product is better than the competitors. I see that happen all the time. Here's a quick marketing tip. If you listen to podcasts, you've definitely heard an ad at some point for one of the following: Casper Mattress, Blue Apron, Harry's Razors, Stitch Fix, or Brooklinen. The list goes on and on. When Drew was first scaling Organifi, I recommended he advertise on other people's podcasts. It gave the brand a huge surge of momentum. Podcast ads can be outrageously effective, but it's nearly impossible to afford that type of advertising if you're selling a low-margin product. If you are going to pay for endorsements, influencers, or any form of advertising, you need to keep profit margin to be able to scale. There's just no way to afford that kind of exposure if you're selling a low-margin product. Hammer down the who behind your product. One of our sheer strength products was, at one point, the second most popular product on the market. This should have felt like a huge accomplishment, but the win was dulled by the fact that no matter what we did, we just could not beat out our number one competitor. I could have shouted from the rooftops that our product was better and half the price. I could have blogged about studies that proved our product had a superior ingredient profile, better sourcing, and more research behind it. It would not have mattered. This competitor outsold us 2-to-1 and got better reviews to boot. Why was this product outselling us 2-to-1 while being twice the price and lower quality? The difference was who. They were only targeting an older demographic with disposable income. We were targeting young guys like us. They were targeting the segment of the market that was willing to spend more money because they were addressing a specific pain point. Our competitor's product was specifically branded for their demographic, and they crushed us. The hungriest segment of the market ignored us. We didn't look like we were for them. People will always pay a premium to solve their specific problem. That's why we choose brands, because they are for us. This is why you absolutely must hammer down the who behind your product. If you can speak directly to your target market, you can charge twice the price while creating loyal fans. If you're just trying to sell as many products as possible to as many people as possible, then you really can only compete on price. If you're attempting to bootstrap your business, it's even more important to dial in your customer base. You will need that profit margin to roll into additional products. If you don't know who you are trying to target, it'll be impossible to charge the premium prices you need to build that revenue. One of my students, Roxelle Cho, is a great example of an entrepreneur who has been rewarded for knowing her customer extremely well. When she built her swimwear company, Fused Hawaii, she set out to inspire women to be more comfortable in their bodies. To do this, she came up with a very simple product, a one-piece swimsuit that's both comfortable and universally flattering. She started talking about women's issues on Facebook Live, and she built a raving fan base. When it came time for her to launch her product, she pre-sold her inventory before it was even in stock. When she pre-sold through the first batch, she raised her price, but the orders kept coming in. She kept raising the price, but people kept buying, even though they knew that the suits wouldn't be ready for weeks. She couldn't keep her bathing suit in stock, but the money kept coming in to fund more orders. That's a fun way to fund a business. Roxelle started with a great product, but the real secret to her success was that she knew her customer extremely well. You need $10,000. The very first year I did the Capitalism Conference, we had 3 keynote speakers: Gary Vaynerchuk, who is just a wonderful person, Grant Cardone, meh, and Robert Herjavec from Shark Tank. While I was on stage with Robert, I asked him what the number one thing that people from Shark Tank invest the money in, and he said, money for inventory. That surprised me, so I asked him to clarify. We talked about how when you've got a winning product, you can't lose momentum by running out of stock. After you've bootstrapped your product and started taking sales, your focus must immediately turn to keeping stock. Sometimes that means securing money to keep enough inventory to keep building that snowball. I recommend having at least $5,000 to $10,000 ready to deploy the moment you need it. You need this money to bridge the gap that's inevitably going to happen once your product starts selling. It doesn't mean you'll have to use all that money, but you should be ready if you do. If you don't have $10K rolling around, then you need to go out and have access to $10K. Some first-time entrepreneurs panic when they hear this, but the $10,000 doesn't need to come from your own pocket. Your job as an entrepreneur is to get access to resources. My mentor, Travis, calls it thinking like a producer. Movie producers don't finance films with their own bank accounts. They also don't write the script or do the acting. Instead, they find the right script, they hire the right actors to sell tickets, and then they raise the money to fund the film. An entrepreneur does the same thing. You have the ideas. You're not physically making the product, you have a manufacturer do that. It's your job to make the connections and manage the money. There are several ways to get the capital you need. Only one of those ways is to take it from your own bank account. Your own resources aren't your only resources. The money could come from a line of credit, a loan taken against your house, or an option with an investor. It could be money from Kickstarter, or Cabbage.com, or Amazon lending. The money could come from anywhere, really. It's just up to you to go find it. Here's an inventory tip. One benefit to placing a huge order is to have some wiggle room to negotiate with your suppliers. When you're only ordering 100 units at a time, you're going to pay the retail rate. But the more you order, the more negotiating power you have. Sometimes a bigger order knocks down your per unit price by up to 30 to 50%. That's a huge boon to the long-term growth of your business to be able to make a large order that drives down the cost of goods sold. If you decide to raise capital. The fastest way to raise capital is to bring on an outside investor. If that investor is willing to be an advisor or a strategic contact, it can be a huge benefit to your growth. And contrary to popular belief, outside investors are usually open to investing in new ideas. Yet nearly every day, I see well-intentioned entrepreneurs botch their pitches to potential investors. You just tell them about your business and ask for $10K in inventory, right? No. It's important to remember that investors aren't interested in your ideas, but their own return on investment. There has to be a clear plan for success in order for that money to go to work. As a potential investor, I'm looking at your business plan. Specifically, I want to know how that money will be spent to make the business grow faster. More importantly, who is your potential audience and where are they? How are you getting in front of them? What are your plans for follow-up products? How are you allocating the money, and how are you planning to reach potential customers? A lot of people are just looking for a Band-Aid. They'll approach an investor with the following pitch. I'm out of cash, I need an infusion, or I'm out of business. Can you solve my problem? No investor ever said, shut up and take my money. Raising money on an idea is really hard and stupid. Raising money to fix a problem is even harder. Raising money to amplify what's already working, that's a slam dunk. From an investor standpoint, I want to see how my money is going to grow the brand. The purpose of money is to make things go faster. It's great that you've got a strong product that's selling well, but do you have 2 or 3 other product ideas that you can roll out to the same customer? Because 10 grand might help you bridge this one gap, but it's not going to provide a return if you don't have a solid idea for your brand and more ideas you can sell. Remember that in the long run, a product does not create $1 million business, but a brand does. Ask yourself this question: is this investment going to grow a company, or are we looking to just patch a fulfillment problem? The first one excites me, but the second one just makes me feel used. For example, someone approached me at one of my conferences and pitched me on investing in a feminine hygiene product. As little as I know about feminine hygiene, it did solve a major pain point, and the total market potential was in the hundreds of millions. So I looked at him and said, "Okay, so what has stopped you from rolling this out?" "I don't have any money to get it started," he said. I passed. No one wants to fund an idea with no momentum. If you aren't willing to do the work to even develop a prototype, then you haven't shown any initiative that money is going to be well spent. I once heard it said that money is attracted to movement. Show movement and the money will follow. Your investors want to see that their money is going to be put to wise use. That means showing them what products you're going to roll out, how the money will be used to acquire new customers, and what momentum is already being built. And to be totally transparent, the opportunity at your fingertips, if you do this right, is huge. There is always more money than there are good ideas. Investors will literally buy up crappy companies because there aren't enough good, let alone great companies for sale. At the same time, there are an abundance of businesses that were never able to cross certain monetary hurdles, so they are sitting on the market endlessly, never getting sold. Most buyers will not look at a business priced under $1 million, and they won't look at a business that doesn't have revenue of at least $1 million, which is why the 12 months to 1 million process is so important. Pro tip: when pitching to an investor, do not ask them for money, ask for advice. Tell the investor you've been pursuing an opportunity and explain the momentum that you have. Tell them that you've run into funding challenges. Tell them that you want to start placing larger inventory orders to serve your growing audience. Tell them how much money you think you need. And finally, ask them, how would you fund the growth of this business if you were me? Asking for money puts people on the defensive. Asking for advice opens them up. Do this and watch how fast money just shows up. Crowdfunding. If you don't want to take on an investor, crowdfunding with a site like Kickstarter is another option. I have a student, Sophie, who wanted to start a business aligned with her mission to reduce waste in the world. She created a reusable lunchbox and started selling it on Amazon. It was a modest success, but being able to place big enough inventory orders to keep in stock was putting a huge strain on her cash flow. She needed capital to scale up production. It wasn't that Sophie couldn't have found investors. I, for one, would have been happy to invest in her company. But when she weighed the cost of taking money from an investor and giving up a chunk of her company versus keeping control, she decided to raise money via Kickstarter instead. The benefit of crowdfunding on Kickstarter goes beyond raising money. You're effectively creating exposure and superfans, a horde of customers that are literally invested in the success of your business. Furthermore, you're not just getting inventory, you're recruiting customers as well. Here are a few must-haves for running a successful Kickstarter campaign that puts you on the map and gets you the capital you need. 1. You need a great video. The most important element is that the video communicates a specific emotion. Sophie's video was recorded on her iPhone, but it was purpose-driven and rooted in emotion. At the very least, you need a video that explains what you're doing, why, and where you're going next. Note that you don't need professional equipment to put a good video together. Plenty of people create compelling videos using only their smartphones. There are tons of tutorials out there on how to do this. 2. You need a list of at least 10 ideal customers in your network, friends, coworkers, etc., who are excited about what you're doing. Ask them to share your Kickstarter with their network, which means their friends, their church group, their fans, and especially their social media followers. This will be just enough exposure to get the ball rolling. Sophie didn't have a huge audience. She simply shared her video on her personal Facebook page and asked her friends to do the same. That was enough to get things moving. 3. You need at least one micro-influencer who can help spread the video's message. It's time to go out and knock on doors to find that influencer. These could be Facebook groups, Instagrammers, bloggers, YouTubers, or podcasters. The only requirement is that this influencer has to have at least 10,000 eyeballs on their page or their account. 10,000 is really the magic number. At that level, the influencer isn't so big that they will ignore you, but they're big enough that their influence helps spread the word. Sophie didn't know any influencers, so she contacted the leader of an eco-friendly Facebook group that had 20,000 members. She asked if she could talk about her Kickstarter in the group, and they agreed. That community ravenously shared and supported Sophie's Kickstarter campaign. Just like any business, people want to know what's different about what you're offering. As with any marketing venture, it's your job to work like hell to get your information in front of the right people. Make a hit list of people you need to connect with to raise awareness about this launch. Sophie ended up raising more than $25,000 in pre-orders for the product. She was expecting more like $5,000, so she really had to hustle to fulfill those orders. Luckily, with Kickstarter, you have a bit more time flexibility for fulfillment than you do on Amazon, so she was able to deliver. She used that capital and that momentum to roll out product after product, and she used the exposure from Kickstarter to get more press in her local area and online. A few years later, Sophie's business was nearing $10 million in sales. Not bad for an idea that started with a $5,000 goal. Good debt and bad debt. If you don't like the idea of giving up a piece of your company and crowdfunding sounds too labor-intensive, taking out a loan to get you over the bridge is another option. People are generally averse to the idea of taking out loans, but you can't consider debt in a vacuum. There's good debt and bad debt. The way you calculate if debt is good or bad is how it's used. Good debt produces return on investment, and bad debt is merely money spent. Borrowing money to buy a fancy car is a bad use of debt. The car loses value as soon as you drive it off the lot, so the ROI is negative. Your money is no longer working for you, it's just gone. But if you're using debt to buy something with a high rate of return, that's good debt. That debt will ultimately make you money. For example, if you take out a loan to buy a house and you rent the house out at a profit, then that's a good use of debt. Bank loans are your best bet for affordable debt, and the Small Business Administration is one of the best sources of low-cost debt in the world. Its drawback? Time. Getting approved can take months. One potential source of good debt is Cabbage.com, which offers crowd-funded loans for businesses. It's best used carefully, however, because it has a really high interest rate, often somewhere between 20 and 30%. Why would you use a service that's so expensive? Because it's still less expensive than running out of inventory. If you're going to borrow money at 20% because you're going to use that money to buy inventory at $10 and sell it for $50, then you've now traded a 20% interest rate for a 500% return. Most of the time, that's a pretty good trade. I use strategic debt in my business when I can reliably predict my ROI. If I know I'm going to sell my inventory and get a 200% ROI on that purchase, then it makes sense to pay 10% or more on a loan. That frees up a lot of cash to use in other areas of business. If you sell on Amazon or use Shopify for your online store, these services often release funding options for businesses with at least 6 to 12 months of sales history. Amazon's program is predictably called Amazon Lending, and it's one of the best sources of debt because it's affordable and fast. However, you must be selling consistently on Amazon before this option becomes available to you. One caveat to debt. While there is nothing inherently wrong with debt, I would caution anyone against using debt at the very beginning of an idea. Taking out loans for an unproven concept is a fast route to financial disaster. Damon John, the CEO of Fubu and a regular investor on Shark Tank, spoke on stage at the Capitalism Conference. He explained how debt can cripple a business. If you take out $100,000 for a business, It's easy to get distracted by storefronts and packaging without ever taking sales. Wait until you have predictable sales to take out debt. One of my most famous YouTube videos is about how to use debt to create passive income. It's a video about leveraging what I call ROI arbitrage. It's borrowing against your house, for example, to buy a website that's producing 25% per year in passive income. Borrowing 5% to make 25% is a good leveraging of debt. Borrowing money to spend it or borrowing money to make speculative investments is bad debt. For example, buying into cryptocurrency is a kind of speculation. People would say that they are investing in cryptocurrencies. No, they were speculating on the price going up and down. That's gambling. When you have a product that's not yet proven to be marketable to customers, you're speculating, you're guessing. That's a bad time to borrow against your home or to take out a business loan. I don't recommend going into debt to start a new business. Using debt to sustain and grow your business, knowing that the payments will come out of future sales, is a good idea. Once you have predictable sales, then you know there's an ROI to your business. Now you can invest more into it. That's when it's a good idea to raise money, go all in, or borrow to be able to scale the business. But not until that point. There's a chasm of difference between the two. Another thing to note is that debt should always go into scaling inventory, not advertising or other costs. Debt has to be paid back, so use it on predictable expenses. You're not guaranteed an ROI on advertising, but if your inventory is guaranteed to sell, then you can be confident that you'll be able to settle up the debt it took to buy that additional inventory. How to know if you need money. Money is an amplifier, not a magic wand. If you have a bad idea, money just amplifies that bad idea. If it's a good idea, it can spread that idea to new customers. So how do you know the difference? My first question for you, have you proven that you can predictably turn $10,000 into at least $20,000? Show me the sales numbers from rolling out your first round of inventory. Money needs to have a strategic reason, and it needs to provide an ROI. How will the use of that money result in a more profitable, more successful business? My second question, how are you taking your sales? If you have a built-in audience from an influencer or a social media following, you might be able to pre-sell all $10,000 worth of product via Kickstarter or as a private sale. Take pre-orders and use that money to purchase your stock, and then pass the bill directly to your customers. If you're having trouble keeping up with demand, or if you want to go bigger and have a reasonable plan to invest more money, then you can present your opportunity to an investor. While you're shopping for a good investor, you can fund the business with small microloans from companies such as Cabbage or Upfund. If you don't know what route to go, don't go into debt. Raise your price. Focus on higher profits rather than acquiring funding. When in doubt, wait. Make a list of investors who you might want to work with and tell them what you're up to. Then, take the time to allow the opportunity to present itself. Maybe you meet an influencer along the way, and you know that it will cause inventory constraints. Perhaps you got picked up by a major news outlet, and it puts strain on your inventory. That's when you make the call to your investor list. Above all, focus on sales and proving your product. Most people are waiting for money so they can make a move. In reality, they have it backward. Money follows movement. Funding your business isn't a matter of getting the money to push your product, but a matter of creating enough momentum to attract the money you need. However, if you follow the steps in the next chapters, that momentum will snowball very quickly. Entrepreneur Spotlight, AJ Patel. Back in 2013, AJ was looking for a new opportunity. For 10 years, he tried his hand at an array of businesses, with ups and downs, some success, and a lot of failures. In high school, he had a web hosting business that made $5,000 a month. Then in college, he made 6 figures doing internet marketing. But both of those businesses fell away. By 2013, he was ready for something new. He wanted to try his hand at selling a physical product. AJ looked for something based in the United States that he could really get behind. Having had issues with his skin ever since he was young, he started a line of skincare products. There was a lot of demand, and he could relate to the customer. His first product was an argan oil that he launched on Amazon, and 2 weeks after launch, he was making $1,000 a day. He knew this was it. People were actually buying what he was selling, and so he decided to add fuel to the fire. He started a second product and went all in with $40,000 of credit card and personal loan debt to bolster the business. I said earlier that I'm debt averse, but this is an example of a time when debt worked very, very well for an entrepreneur. AJ's gamble paid out big. After about 3 months, he was making more than $100,000 a month and was on track for $1 million a year. And just 13 months after his first argan oil sale, he'd blown far beyond that $1 million a year mark. He was making 7 figures every single month. AJ's path wasn't without its stumbles. In that first year, he tried to do everything in the business, which was a real learning experience. He finally realized going it alone just wasn't scalable. He needed help. He began hiring, discovering that to be successful, you really need a team that's collectively smarter than you are alone. Basically, he told me, you need a team that will mask your weaknesses. As the business grew, he built his team faster, became quicker at delegating work, and learned to be a better leader. He focused on scalable infrastructure, thinking about the resources he'd need in 6 months or a year so that he could get ahead of hiring the right people. After a couple of years, AJ had close to 20 products in his brand. Every new item built on what he knew his consumers wanted, a wider selection of natural skincare products. He added deodorants, moisturizers, and toners, and paid attention to see how the market reacted. As his business matured, so did his process of adding new products. Instead of guessing what his customers wanted and then measuring sales, he proactively aligned his product selection with his brand values. He looked closely at his product portfolio and tweaked it, cleaning up the product ingredient list, making everything really natural and refreshing the branding. He said, quote, "These days, anything you build has to have a strong brand component. I don't think that was necessarily true when I started back in 2013. These days, you have to go beyond just a product-based business. You have to focus on your why," end quote. With the success of his brand and the support of his team, AJ was able to start 4 more businesses in as many years. One was Trinova, a brand selling home, auto, and boat products, which he sold at the end of 2016 for a very impressive dollar amount. But even before he sold Trinova, he launched a pet supplements brand and then added health and wellness supplements to his portfolio. These brands were successful enough to get interest from a private equity firm. He sold a portion of his business to private equity while keeping a good chunk of ownership and staying on the board of directors so he can help however possible. Then he launched a brand called Smooth Viking, which sells men's beard and hair care products. He also started his own private equity company to invest in other businesses. All this started by selling one product on Amazon. He said, quote, "People are always afraid of failing, but failures can provide really valuable insights and lessons, which gives you more confidence. Most people don't take action because they're afraid of losing money or of what someone might say about them. But when you take action, you at least learn something even if you don't make money," end quote. Every year, AJ learns more than he did the year before. More than anything, he's learned that success really comes down to people. People help you scale businesses. And that's what's allowed him to run 5 different brands at the same time, and to ensure those brands align with his reason for being. Chapter 6. Step 4. Stack the deck. I was 21 when I started following famous entrepreneur Gary Vaynerchuk. I had just graduated from college, and I was in that self-discovery period, trying really hard to find direction. My lifelong dream was to own the Cleveland Indians, but I had no idea how I was going to get there. Around that time, I saw some dude announce at a conference that he intended to own the New York Jets. I snapped to attention. This guy is 10 years older than me, and 10 years closer to the same goal I have, I thought. I'm gonna just watch what he does. Maybe he can shed some light on the path. I've watched Gary closely ever since, and he was one of the first guests that I ever booked at the very first Capitalism conference. I wanted to discover what his plan was to own a major sports franchise. What I discovered is that his entire focus is on building the engine that allows him to create and acquire brands that could be worth billions of dollars. When it comes to stacking the deck in your favor, there's no one better than Gary. He spent years delivering content and building an audience that follows and trusts him. That content gives him leverage, exposure, and most importantly, relationships. Put simply, he has resources at his fingertips he can tap into to help build or scale any brand that he touches. What fascinates me most about Gary's strategy is that he can use his audience to launch brands. In fact, he's used that leverage to launch a speaking bureau, a sports agency, and several consulting agencies. When he launched his winery, Empathy Wines, I was among the first in line to place a big order. I also flew to New York City to interview Gary about the launch, where he reframed the strategy for me. He said, quote, "I have no expectation of converting any of the audience that I already have into customers of any product that I sell. Think about it. I give away most of my content for free. The amount of sales I've made in return doesn't even come close to balancing the amount of content I give away. I put out content for the sake of putting out content. I'm comfortable asking my audience to consider my product if they're already in the market for sneakers or wine, but I have no expectation of conversion. That's not why I'm putting out content. In fact, the hucksters I make fun of who are selling tons of product to their audience from moment one, they're actually killing me in the short term. Their sales crush mine. I'm not in this for the short term. I want my audience to show up at my funeral, and I mean that. I don't need my audience's money. I'm going to sell way more bottles of Empathy wine to people who have never heard of me. But building VaynerMedia is the way I'm setting up the play for Empathy and for the brands I buy in the future." End quote. I realize now that Gary is playing this game very differently from everyone else out there. Gary expects very little of his audience. After all, his following isn't just a following of wine lovers, but that audience still has the power to command tens of thousands of wine bottle sales. Furthermore, the relationships he's built have opened up the door for that brand. In a podcast interview that I did with the Empathy Wine CEO, Jonathan Troutman, he told me that the strategy wasn't to depend on Gary's audience, but that it was the first spark. The wine, of course, still has to be good, and the brand still needs to stand on its own, but the audience serves as that initial spark to get the product moving off the shelves. In the same way that Tim Ferriss can put a brand on the map by talking about it on his podcast, Gary can do it with his audience, even if the product isn't perfectly tailored to his entire audience. That's the power of having even a little bit of attention. Other alcohol brands have sold for billions of dollars. In fact, George Clooney's tequila brand was sold for a cool $1 billion just 4 years post-launch. So that spark could become the flame that buys Gary the New York Jets. You don't have to build an audience the size of Gary's to completely alter the course of your business. If you do just a fraction of what we outline next, you'll set yourself up quickly to put your company on the map, sprint toward 25 sales per day, and eventually 100 sales per day, and clear the million before your first year is done. Welcome to the grind. If we wanted to make earning money really simple, we could boil it down to 2 steps. Pick something to sell and sell it. Or as I like to say, find a group of people who want something and sell it to them. Most people never make it through the first step of deciding what to sell. Instead, they sell their time in the form of a 9-to-5 job. Deciding what your business is going to sell, who your customers are going to be, and getting your product made is no small task. That's why most people never make it to this point. But when you make these decisions, you're nearly halfway home. However, as the old adage goes, nothing really happens until something is sold. Everything up to this point is simply getting into the game. You have a product to sell. Now it's time to play the game. Right now, you don't know how to play the game, so the first few months of the game are a grind. During this time, you will likely obsess over every detail and you will overthink every decision. When the chaos starts to get to you, take peace in the fact that your goal is incredibly simple. Your only job in this period is to take a sale. That's it. You will feel tempted to make it complicated, to follow a slew of different people's advice, or to create complex sales systems. You will want to get distracted by reading marketing blogs and chasing every opportunity that falls into your lap. But you have just one job: take a sale. Whenever I feel stressed, I remind myself that my job in this business is to take a sale. If I'm having a bad day, I'll often make a list of prospective customers or put something on social media that talks about one of my products. Then I call those customers personally, email them, or send them a message. My goal is to take one sale. It's hard to express how much that can turn my day around. Sometimes you have to think very small in order to focus, but doing that creates momentum that very quickly builds. Right now, your focus is 100% on taking sales, and you will have to resist big thinking to do the work necessary to take those orders. Thankfully, I've coached hundreds of entrepreneurs through this process, and believe me, it used to be much harder. It used to be that entrepreneurs would spend 3 to 4 months just getting their finished products in front of enough people to take a sale. Today, we know better. Today, we know that we can complete the grind in 30 days or less. We do that by stacking the deck. How to guarantee sales from day one. You don't need to be a social media celebrity or even have a following to guarantee sales of your product on the first day. You just need enough eyeballs to put the cards in your favor. That's what led me to utter these 3 words: I love yoga. By no means am I the first person or even the millionth person in recent history to say those 3 words on social media. The impact they had on my business, though, was incalculable. Those 3 words were essentially enough to get me in front of as many people as I needed to launch a successful and profitable brand. Back in 2013, I was working with many new entrepreneurs who were excited about the opportunity to start a business. However, they sometimes got frustrated when it came time to take sales for their product. They did a ton of research to find their first product. They did the hard work of getting samples and working with suppliers. Then they set up their Amazon store and crickets. I call that the hump. It's when you do a lot of work to get your product ready for sale, and then you hit a barrier to the next steps. And it's why the first few months in business are called the grind. If new business owners don't get sales right away, they often get discouraged, anxious, or worried. Sometimes they think about quitting before they even have a chance to get started. But if they make it over this hump, they sail towards success. Fast sales out of the gate, on the other hand, give them the momentum to keep going and keep growing. That's why so many of my students are so profitable and successful. In the grind, we work almost exclusively on getting fast sales as fast as possible. While I was coaching some of them through this process, I heard one of my peers utter, "Man, I'm so jealous of established companies who already have customer lists. They can just market their product to people who have already bought in the past. I mean, look at Apple. They have people waiting in line to get the next product. Wouldn't it be nice if you could launch a product to a group of people ready to buy it the day you had it ready?" Up until that point, I'd been teaching sales and marketing strategies to help my group of new entrepreneurs get through the hump. Those strategies worked, but they took time and effort to really kick in. When I heard my friend utter those words, I wondered, is there a way for me to stack the deck so that sales come rushing in on the very first day? Maybe we didn't have a customer list or the budget that big companies have, but still, I wondered if I could get people lining up ready to buy the products the day it was ready. At the time, my partner Sean and I were launching our yoga business, and I was documenting the whole thing for my students. I called him one Saturday morning and asked him for an update on the state of the yoga mats that we had ordered. "They're on a boat, on their way from the supplier that we chose on Alibaba," he said. "They won't be on Amazon for like 8 weeks. He was frustrated. We had done all this work, and now we had to wait 8 weeks for the product to be ready? However, I saw this as an opportunity. I told Sean, "Okay, buddy, that means we have 8 weeks to stack the deck in our favor. Our job now is to do everything we can to ensure that we have people ready to buy the very first day that our yoga mats are ready for sale. How the heck do we do that? He asked. We started talking about our options. Should we blog about yoga and build traffic to our website? What if we made videos and launched the product on YouTube? We could build an email list, or we could partner with a big yoga community. All of those ideas sounded great, but they would take longer than 8 weeks to kick in. Instead, we looked for the quickest, simplest, and fastest way to get people to line up ready to buy our yoga mats. At the time, Facebook had just released business pages, and they were getting a lot of free traffic. We created a small Facebook page around the topic of yoga, and we called it I Love Yoga. Straightforward enough, right? The audience we built was broad, but that didn't matter. I knew that anyone who liked that page was into yoga, and anyone who was into yoga would buy yoga mats. I had already identified the products that people who are into yoga buy, and all I needed to focus on from there was building enough of an audience to be able to talk up the yoga mats and the yoga products that I was planning to sell. We started sharing content on the page to get our followers to like and share the content. We spent $10 a day on advertising to build the following, and we engaged with our following in the comments. After about 30 days, we had around 3,000 people who liked our page. But we did one more thing that was the most important piece of it all. We documented our product release on the I Love Yoga Facebook page. We didn't brag about the product or try to sell it. We simply talked about our product by showing the prototype process, explaining the difference in our product, and sharing every change we made to the product based on the feedback from people like them. We showed them that we'd added a thicker strap to our yoga mat simply because that was what they said they wanted. We showed them that we listened to them, that we wanted to hear what they had to say, and that we wanted to serve their needs. As we were building that Facebook page, Sean and I knew that as soon as we were ready to launch, we'd have an audience who was ready to buy. Or for all you poker players out there, we had stacked the deck in our favor. Getting over the hump. The goal in this stage of the process is to get enough eyeballs in one place to get a spark lit. It's a bit like using a magnifying glass to start a fire. Can you point just enough power at your target to get it to ignite? Using Facebook to build up a hungry audience will work as long as Facebook continues to exist, but the tactics you use may change with the times. And since the internet is always evolving, new opportunities are always opening up. But the principles are timeless. Your job is to stack the deck so that you have people waiting to buy your product the day it comes out. You will do this by running advertising to a central place where you can contact your audience, engage that audience with content that appeals to them, and document the launch of your product so that they're primed and ready to buy when it's ready. Getting to this point is hard work. Deciding who your audience is, developing your product, figuring out how to bring your product to market, and placing your order for inventory. Add to that the fact that you've spent anywhere between $500 and $5,000 on that inventory. Then suddenly you hit the hump. The time between ordering your inventory and it being ready for sale, which can range anywhere from 2 weeks to 3 months. And it can feel like the longest wait of your life. Sure, it's exciting to hear that your product is manufactured, shipped, put on a boat, and heading across the ocean, but the anticipation is like waiting for your first baby to arrive. Ask me how I know. If you start on Kickstarter, you can pre-sell a lot of product, gaining faster sales momentum. If you're selling on Amazon, you can't go live with sales until there's actually inventory at the warehouse. Either way, stacking the deck with ready-to-buy customers will strike a match that brings a roaring fire to life. Not only does that give you the momentum and the energy to keep growing, but it also helps you rank for keywords on both Kickstarter and Amazon. The buzz you generate also gets people talking about you on social media and sharing the product with their friends. It makes getting reviews easier too. In other words, it would be a big mistake to avoid stacking the deck. I have seen many would-be entrepreneurs with good ideas simply give up because they didn't get momentum fast enough. Following these steps could have saved them. I want to point out that I might be an expert at this now, but I was really just guessing my way through all of this at the beginning. Yes, I have a background in digital marketing that helped me navigate all of this, but I was still guessing at the strategy. I was able to beat almost all of my competitors because most people are doing nothing to stack the deck. They're so focused on the moment their product goes live that they're not even considering how to boost the momentum ahead of time. So even if you only do this process with 20% competence, you're still going to be miles ahead of the game. Your only goal at the end of the 8 weeks on launch day is to have enough of a following to be able to move your first few hundred units of your product. That way, you can get the snowball rolling and get it to 25 sales per day. There are a ton of options for you to find that following to do this. Facebook groups are free and easy to build, so are LinkedIn groups, and they each have very high engagement. Some people use Instagram pages or other social media accounts, and they work well as long as you can stand out. Some people just use their own personal Facebook page, which can do the trick. The important thing is attracting a few hundred people who are responsive and passionate, like you are conversing with a community. That community will follow your product journey and support you when it comes time to launch. That will be the spark that takes you to 25 sales per day and beyond. How much of an audience do I need? Theoretically, 100 people in the same room, ready to buy on launch day, will be enough to start the fire. The size of the audience matters less than the responsiveness of your community. Buying cheap traffic to a Facebook page won't give you as much momentum as dedicated email subscribers or a close community of Instagram followers. The goal is not to have a lot of passive followers. Your goal is to have people lining up at the doors on launch day ready to buy. Yes, you can include your friends in this list. You can include your coworkers. You can even include the pizza delivery guy who needs your product. I know some people who launch their products with just a private email or text thread with a few dozen people. That's not ideal, but it works. Remember, your goal is to get just enough people ready to buy on launch day that you can use to kickstart the momentum. I have found this formula to be helpful during this process. 1,000 followers, 10 personal contacts, and 1 influencer equals 100 sales. In other words, if you can get your brand in front of 1,000 people on your own using ads or content creation, then you have enough of a public following to smash launch day. On top of that, if you ask 10 personal friends to join the launch and you secure 1 micro-influencer, you will have the numbers you need. When Sean and I had more than 1,000 followers on our Facebook page, we knew that we had enough of a fan base to begin the launch process. On top of that, we called our list of personal friends who did yoga. We knew that if one of our friends was into yoga, then he or she knew other people who were also into yoga. We told them what we were up to, gave them a free yoga mat, and asked them if they would be willing to post about it on social media on launch day. If you want to really knock it out of the park, add 1 micro-influencer to the mix to stoke the fire. In our case, that meant forming a partnership with 1 similar yoga page with at least 10,000 followers. That was 1,000 followers on our page, 10 personal friends, and 1 micro-influencer. We knew that would be enough to get to 100 sales on launch day. And if we were wrong, well, it was still better than if we had done nothing at all. You don't have to have everything perfect, but the more eyeballs, the better. If you only have 500 followers or no following at all, but you still have personal friends and an influencer, launch. Go as hard as you can with the resources you have. Remember, most people get stuck here. They put their product up for sale and then they wait. They expect the internet gods to rain favor upon them in the form of sales. Do not follow their lead. Use whatever you have, whether that be a YouTube channel, a friend with a blog, or your own personal Facebook page to start the fire. My student Sophie, who I mentioned before, followed this process with amazing success, even though she didn't have a big following or a lot of connections. When she ran her successful Kickstarter campaign, she documented the process on her personal Facebook page. She had no ad budget. Her entire marketing plan just consisted of lining up a few hundred people, a few personal contacts, and a Facebook group. And she's been stoking the fire ever since. She recently emailed me to tell me that she had made $1 million in a month selling her reusable lunchboxes and other products. That's one hell of a fire. How should I build my audience? Social media whims can change from 1 minute to the next. 1 second, a new Facebook feature is hot. The next, something happens on Instagram or Snapchat or LinkedIn or TikTok or whatever the cool new thing is. And it seems like you have to be 22 or younger to stay ahead. All of them are centered on what gets attention and what gets engagement. For the purposes of promoting your product on launch day, you can ignore the latest social media buzz. You don't need to become an expert on any specific platform. You just need to choose a way to get in front of your ideal person in a way that gets their attention and encourages them to follow your journey. Your best bet is to discover where your audience already lives and combine it with how you are comfortable communicating with them. One of my students, for example, has an organization company. His audience is mostly women who are obsessed with perfectly organized closets, drawers, and the like. His audience already hangs out on Pinterest, so he puts his attention there. I, on the other hand, have never used Pinterest and would have a really hard time building an audience there. Since I like to talk about business and it's natural for me to talk into a microphone, podcasting is my preferred method for building an audience. I can't get immediate feedback from a podcast because there's no interaction, so I send my audience to an email list so that I can communicate with my followers there. The process in this book will work on any platform as long as you share content, run ads, and/or actively engage with your community. If you're building up a brand you're personally excited about, then creating content on a blog, a podcast, or a video channel is your best bet. It'll enable you to attract long-term followers. And as a side note, those long-term followers can also turn into investors or partnerships or influencers or other relationships that can really benefit the growth of the brand. If you're not a subject matter expert when it comes to your market, then you'll want to run ads and bring people to a central location, like a Facebook group, an Instagram account, or an email list, because you need those 1,000 followers to be within your control. Some people consider hiring out content creation or hiring a marketing agency at this stage in the process, but that's going too deep too soon. Remember, you only need 100 people or so who buy at the first launch to start building that snowball. Here's a shortcut that can make this process happen faster. If you can get your message in front of 10,000 people or more, then you can jump straight to communicating with them about your new product line. So if you or one of your partners already have an audience, the hack to this is creating a relationship where they're incentivized to talk about the business or the brand. Or if you have an advertising budget, spend some of that on sponsoring related podcasts or YouTube channels that have that built-in audience. Now, what the heck do you put in front of your audience to get them excited to follow you? And more importantly, excited to buy on launch day? All you need to do is document the building of your business. That's it. Post pictures of your prototype. Share videos of how nervous you are. Post a picture of one of your friends holding the finished product. Write posts about why you decided to serve this market. On top of that, entering the conversation that your community is having goes a long way. For example, if a famous golfer hits the scene and you're selling golf gear, do a blog post, a video, or a podcast about that new golfer's chances. Is he the next Tiger Woods, or is the hype overblown? If your community is buzzing about something, give your take on it. This will engage your audience and attract new ones, and it breaks up the content that's exclusively about your product launch. You might also simply answer commonly asked questions among your audience. Make a list of 5 to 10 questions that your person asks when they start their journey, and then create a piece of content around that. This blend of product pieces, engagement with your community, and commonly asked questions will get your tiny audience to rally around you. One of my students, Colin, runs a company called Wild Foods. They're at Wild Foods Co. on Instagram. He does a great job of mixing product, commentary, and questions into his public following. He started at 0 and went through this exact process, and now he's crossed 7 figures, with his brand carried by retail chains all across the country. Remember that a brand is really just trust, and you are earning people's trust at this stage in the process. When people start to engage, they will bring their friends with them. People trust the personal opinions of their friends. That's why word-of-mouth advertising is so valuable to a business. You can stack the deck with that trust early by putting out your own personal opinions to groups of people already looking to you to solve their problems. During this process, you may also start to get the attention of other influencers. That is a very, very good thing. One caveat though, no one likes a cold call. Approaching an influencer and asking them to feature or share your content isn't going to build a relationship. It's only going to make that person feel like a transaction. The trick is not to ask as in, hey, can I be on your show? The trick is to give. Hey, here's a piece of content I made that I think your audience would love. Is there anything that your audience is struggling with that I could write about or speak to in order to serve them? If you do that, you'll find that influencers will happily invite you onto their platforms to better serve their audiences. If you're a guest on someone's podcast and your content is helpful, you make that podcaster look good and you earn more followers. It's a win-win. It will be slow and frustrating at first, but you have to do it. Answer every comment and respond to every message. Just like a new diet or another life change, it will be hard to see the progress at first, but over a few weeks, you will gain the momentum that you need to hit pay dirt. Prepping for go time. Everything in the lead up to day 1 is designed to prep your audience to buy from you on launch day. For Sean and myself, that meant that the closer we got to day 1, the more promotional we got. Our messaging wasn't over the top or pushy, but it was direct. We're really excited about this product line, but we have some bad news. We were only able to order 500 of these for the first round. If you want one, leave a comment below and we'll put you on our special launch list so that you're first in line, ahead of everybody else, when they go live on April 30th. That's it. That's all we said. We weren't shy about selling the product or sharing the inventory constraints, and people responded. It worked. We took 50 sales out of the gate and 50 more sales shortly after that. Those people left reviews and told their friends, and we were soon doing 50 sales per day on that first product, which was the equivalent of a 6-figure business. We knew we had a winner. Don't miss the opportunity to line up those hot leads so they're ready to buy from you on launch day. You might think that your business is too small or your niche is too specific for a launch strategy to be applicable to you. 2 of my students, Jenna and Travis Ziegler, are eye doctors. They started out selling sunglasses, but they wanted to release more products that reflected their expertise. They had a list of products they wanted to launch, but there didn't seem to be enough volume to support the purchase of more inventory. One of those products was a spray for dry eyes. There's just not a lot of volume out there for people looking for a spray to relieve dry eyes. They told me that they wanted to start a Facebook group for people with dry eye syndrome, but even I thought that following would be too small to launch multiple products. Guys, I told them, that's a really small market. Maybe you should go a bit broader. Just offer general advice for eye health. Against my advice, they started a Facebook group where they answered frequently asked questions about dry eyes. At the end of the week, they did a Facebook Live to answer questions within their community. All of these dry eye sufferers started inviting their friends, who they knew suffered from dry eyes as well, tagging one another and asking more questions. These 2 doctors built up a community of only a few hundred people, but they were incredibly responsive and quick to engage, and the community loved it. Turns out, I was wrong. When they finally launched their dry eye spray product, it blew up. The community rallied to support it, buy it, and review it. That product had extremely high profit margins, and they didn't have to pay for advertising because the community helped spread the word. That one product completely changed their business. They were able to launch other products to the same audience, tripling and eventually quadrupling their revenue. They now had the ability to test different ideas quickly without having to worry about competition, price wars, or people who had thousands more reviews than they did. They could predictably roll out products, and they built $1 million business as a result. Your hot list. One of the things that helps guarantee your success is developing a hot list of buyers who raise their hands and commit to buying your product on launch day. The process for doing this is stupidly simple. Here's how it works. As you publicly talk about your product, you will inevitably have certain people who get more excited than others. I like to reward them by putting them first in line. The more people who are first in line to buy my product, the better chances of my product's success. For example, as I get closer to launch day, I start to get more promotional. I might post something like, as you know, our yoga mats go on sale April 2nd, and this early in the process, it's really important that we get feedback from people who have been following us. Sadly, we only have a few hundred available, so I'm holding a handful of them for followers who are raring and ready to go. If you want me to reserve one for you for the first 24 hours on launch day, comment, "I want one," and I will add you to our hot list. When you start saying that there is a limited supply of a product, you start to build up a mini buying frenzy. People will sign up for your hot list even if they were on the fence before. This buying frenzy creates momentum that allows you to sell your product even harder. For example, I might follow up with a post like the following. Wow, over 50 people commented on my last post and said that they wanted one of our yoga mats. I'm so honored, thank you. I will be holding a total of 100 yoga mats to ensure that first responders get their mat on the day it's available. Sadly, that means that even fewer will be available to the general public. So if you want to be on the first in line list, please comment first in line and I will add you to the hot list. I like to bring my hot list into a separate communication channel, usually an email list, a Slack channel, or a private Facebook group, so that they feel like an insider. I remind them that they are getting advance notice of the product going live. And when the product is ready on launch day, that small group of people will rush the doors to buy my product. How to stack the deck. Again, your one goal during this stage of the process is to build a big enough audience to earn your brand at least 100 customers when you launch. Here's how you get those first 100 customers. 1. Identify where your target market already hangs out. Sometimes they're already following certain Instagram pages, they're in specific Facebook groups, or they watch particular YouTube channels. 2. Create a series of content pieces directly targeted to that person. You can also start building relationships with the people who run those groups that you found in the first step. 3. Document the process of your product. What's different about it? Why did you make certain decisions? How far are you from launch? 4. Start announcing when the product is going to be available. Build up your following, your network, and your content by responding to every comment, replying to every message, and sharing your opinion on topics within the community. And then let your followers know when they'll be able to buy your product. 5. Reach out to your own personal contacts and start lining up that one influencer. Many people discount the power of their own personal network. If you're passionate about or involved in the market to which you're speaking, then you absolutely know 10 people who are customers in that market. If you're launching a CrossFit brand, then you know 10 people who also do CrossFit and are posting about it on Facebook. It doesn't matter if those people aren't an influencer. If you're only trying to get 100 people to buy in the first part of your launch, then you only need those 10 people to influence 10 other people. Today, the average person has a few hundred Instagram followers and at least 100 Facebook friends. Line up 10 of them and you're in front of thousands of people. That's more than enough to do damage. 6. Finally, build your hot list. Start moving people to the front of the line so that they can be one of the first people to try your product. Real-world stacked decks. Roxelle Cho is one of my favorite students. She started Fused Hawaii, a handmade swimwear brand that empowers women to live comfortably in the skin they're in. Not long ago, Roxelle was making products in her garage, but then she gained the loyalty and support of a growing customer base through Facebook Live, Instagram, and an email list. She didn't consider herself a marketer. She just showed up for her audience, which caused Fused Hawaii to scale incredibly fast. She quickly passed $120,000 in sales per month with only her social media. I sell swimwear, but I don't consider Fused Hawaii a swimwear company, she told me. When I started out, I was making handbags, screen-printed shirts, hats, anything I could make out of my garage. I named the company Fused because I was fusing together all of my artistic instincts. I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew the business was something that was going to continue to shift through the years. Growing our audience's brand allows me to experience these incredibly cool moments with our customers as we grow. When something great happens, our first instinct is to share it. That's what all of this is about, growing alongside people." End quote. Roxelle's swimwear mission was to differentiate from all of the other brands out there selling confidence, both real and false. As women, she says, even when you feel good in your own skin, you're always going to reach a moment where you have a lack of confidence. So for the ideal Fused Hawaii woman, it's not just about feeling confidence or saying we're confident. It's more about taking the leap when you don't know the results or the outcome. It's about going in the direction of your beliefs and your intention. As I've gotten really clear on my messaging, it's become clearer that it's not just about confidence. We're speaking to the girl who is going to take a risk and jump towards her dreams even when it's scary, not knowing where she's going to land, but knowing she'll be strong enough to stand when she does. End quote. That message has vaulted Roxelle above all the other brands who are speaking to women. She says, quote, "In Hawaii, the land of swimwear, we're in our swimwear all the time. It's the most vulnerable piece of clothing there is. In Hawaii, we're out in public in our swimwear, in lingerie basically. To feel confident in our skin in that state is the win for me, and what I want to bring to my audience with our messaging." End quote. Roxelle's swimwear success came at the same time as her message. The two threads are intertwined. Today, Roxelle can sell whatever she wants at whatever quantity she desires. Her customers buy months in advance, and she literally cannot keep up with the demand. That's a nice problem to have. When you have an audience, you can take more strategic risks too. The Flexible Dieting Lifestyle is a company that I've advised in the past, and they sell healthy versions of favorite cheat meals. The co-founder, Zach Rochelot, built his audience by posting recipes on Instagram, and it was all he needed to launch physical products. He said, quote, "We had built a brand around solving a problem everyone has, turning cheat meals into everyday meals. One of our biggest hits was a recipe for protein cookie butter. It had a great nutritional value, tasted great, and met our audience's cravings. But one thing they kept telling us was that basically they didn't want to make it themselves. They wanted to be able to just buy it. So we decided to just figure it out. We developed the product, came up with 10,000 units, and launched it with zero ad spend. All we did was show the product to our audience, put in front of their eyes this thing they'd been asking for, and tell them, hey, here it is, swipe up to purchase. And they did. We went through 10,000 units in a single week." End quote. Zach focused on storytelling and building an audience with an emotional connection to his company. That emotional connection is the key point. You want customers who aren't price shopping, but who buy your product because they feel connected to you. When should I hit the go button? As your inventory inches its way across the ocean and gets closer to its arrival at the Amazon warehouse, you'll be able to more accurately pinpoint day one, launch day. A word of advice, give yourself a time buffer. If you think your product is going to be available on Friday, schedule your launch for the following Wednesday. Hyping up a launch date only to be unable to take sales on that day is a huge waste of customer attention and engagement. You may want to consider creating some sort of incentive for people to buy within the first few days. This could be a bonus or some kind of discount like a BOGO deal. In general, I don't like pricing discounts. It can be incredibly difficult to pivot out of being seen as a discount brand. But it's okay in a launch period with the understanding that you'll probably never discount the price of the product ever again, except in special situations. Just make sure to include a firm deadline on the discount and stick to it. Be protective of your inventory, especially when you're doing extras. My preference is to have a bonus or an add-on to make your product an irresistibly sexy buy in the first few days. Sometimes honest scarcity is the best incentive to buy. If you only have 500 units available and you have 500 people on your launch list, not to mention the 1,000 people who follow you on Instagram and all of their friends who might see and share your content too, then there will be people who aren't going to get to make the purchase. This kind of scarcity only drives more interest. In the customer's mind, scarcity equals value. During the final 7 days before your launch, you should talk about the launch every day. Email your list, post about it on social media, leverage any influencer relationships you've built. Burn it into everyone's brain. The product goes live at 11 a.m. next Wednesday. The minute 11 a.m. hits, watch the floodgates open. But be sure to temper your expectations for those first few days. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of a launch and the engagement of your audience, and then be disappointed when you don't immediately sell out, which again, you do not want to do. As long as you get at least 25 to 100 sales in the first few days, and if you do what I outline in this book, it's very rare that won't happen, then you'll have enough momentum to start to scale the business further. Remember the formula to get to $1 million. 3 to 5 products at an average price point of $30, each getting 25 sales per day, equals $1 million business. Once you reach 25 sales, your job becomes following up with those customers to get reviews. We'll talk about that in a later chapter, as I don't want to teach you to sprint before you know how to walk. Your only job right now is to take a sale, and the best way to do that is by stacking the deck. Entrepreneur Spotlight, Marvin Lee. Marvin Lee was a registered nurse with a very high-paying job from which he was almost fired. Management was moving everyone around, and Marvin soon realized his job was in jeopardy. He'd also lost his passion for the work. He got into nursing to help people, and those parts of the job were amazing, but there were so many standards and policies and people telling him what he should be doing that those parts of the job he loved were getting lost. Marvin had always wanted financial freedom too. He'd had a bit of a rough upbringing, which had motivated him to make something of himself. So he'd been saving his money, but he didn't really know what to do with it. He talked to some friends who were doing well with online businesses, and he wondered if it was possible for him too. During his research, he stumbled across my videos. When he discovered that it was indeed possible for him, he partnered up with his best friend to get started. They began looking for a product that would be profitable and that they had the budget to compete with. They didn't have a lot of money that they were willing to invest. But they discovered a unique fitness tool that they could adjust for the yoga niche. Shockingly, there were 0 competitors with a similar product in the yoga space. It was perfect. A friend of Marvin's was in touch with manufacturers in China, and he got them amazing deals with the manufacturer. Having done this research, Marvin worked with the factory to make modifications based on reviews. The end result was the same basic product being sold as a general recovery tool, but tailored to the yoga audience. It was a huge hit. People loved it. However, Marvin knew I recommended having 3 to 5 products to create a brand. While Marvin had a popular product on his hands, he didn't have a brand, and he found creating one really, really tough. He didn't know how to define brand and put a neat box around it. People would tell him brand was his logo or how a customer felt when they saw the product, but what did that mean in terms of actual steps? He read books on marketing that were full of random stuff he couldn't apply to his business. He knew that for branding, different was better. But what did it even mean to be different? Should they have a different color, a higher price? They struggled to figure out how to be different and how to tie that into a brand theme that would serve the customer. It was hard to create an aligned brand when they'd never targeted a specific person. They just focused on creating a better product, but he hadn't considered who they were serving. Then he heard me in one of my videos hammering home the importance of audience and messaging. Why don't I just talk to my audience directly, he thought. Marvin didn't post much on Instagram and he didn't have a large following, but he started taking the time to send direct messages to customers, asking them what they thought of the product. That was a total game changer, Marvin told me. Having real conversations with people who loved the product made us understand who they were and what products they might want next. Even though it was only a few hundred people, Marvin's audience responded loudly. He and his partner used the feedback they received to adjust their marketing, which resulted in more sales. They moved from just having a product to thinking about the person who would benefit from it and what they would use that product for. They always made sure that they were serving the person. By the time the competitors found their market and tried to copy them, Marvin and his partner were too far ahead. At that point, customers kept choosing them thanks to all the reviews from real people. Marvin has had tons of success with just 2 products, but he plans to add at least 3 more. Then he'll be in a position to possibly sell the business. If I could take one piece of advice to someone looking to start a products business, it would be to make sure that you know what you're doing first, Marvin said. A lot of people say take action, but don't rush. You'll make mistakes, expensive ones. Marvin and his partner didn't just test everything to see what worked. They thought things out. They considered all scenarios. You have to love learning, he told me. If you don't continue learning, someone is going to outlearn you and become more successful. And in this game, learning means listening to your customers. In business, there will always be people who want to copy you, which means each business is a dying business. If you're not forever evolving, you have a time limit. I remember back when we started the brand and launched the product right around Christmas. Everyone told us that for the holiday period, we should order 3 to 5 times as much product as we thought we'd sell. But we didn't have the cash for that, he said. So the two of them sat down and had a serious conversation. How willing are you to go through with this? They asked each other. They were both determined to push through and decided to put $80,000 on a credit card with an 18% interest rate. They knew that if this didn't go right, they'd go bankrupt. Marvin told me, quote, "That's when I found out how strong I was and how bad I wanted it. It turned out to be the best thing I've ever done. I finally feel like I've accomplished something on my own. To me, that's priceless." Chapter 7. Step 5. Launching your first product. When Matt and I started growing Sheer Strength, we loved to walk around bodybuilding shows and fitness conferences just to see what kinds of products were being talked about. It was fun to walk up to booths that were offering samples of pre-workout drinks and take a sip and say to each other, ours is better. It was a great way to spy on the competition and also to get product ideas. Looking back, some of those were the best times I've ever had in business. One day, while walking through one of the conventions, we saw a bunch of people lining up for free samples. That was a normal sight, of course, because companies gave out free samples of their products to generate buzz. But this was no ordinary line. This line of taste testers wrapped all the way around the convention, even interfering with some of the other companies' booths. There were hundreds of people in line for a free sample of something. It was like an amusement park, with everyone waiting for the most popular roller coaster to open. I wondered if maybe The Rock was at the other end of the line signing autographs or something. A fun fact, Matt and I always dreamed of partnering with The Rock at Sheer Strength. We met him once, but it never went anywhere. Overcome with curiosity, I turned to someone in line and asked, "Hey, what's this line for?" He pointed up to the ceiling. There I saw a logo of a company I had never heard of, Quest Nutrition. In an instant, I became fascinated with this company. It would be easy to think that Quest Nutrition always had a line of people waiting for it. It was just a few years into existence, and it was already the best-selling protein bar ever. I would later discover that Quest did $500 million in sales by its 4th year in business. That type of growth is amazing, but it didn't start out that way. I became so interested with Quest Nutrition that I invited the founder, Tom Bilyeu, to speak at the Capitalism Conference a few years later. Tom told me that he started making the products himself in his own kitchen. He was hand-cutting them on his own. Tom didn't even have a clear launch plan in place. He would talk about it to whoever would listen, and he gave the bars out for free to athletes. Over time, small groups of raving fans started to form. They began sharing innovative ways to eat the bars. For example, if you heated it in the microwave and mushed it into a circle, it became a cookie. And if you broke the bar up into a thick protein shake, it tasted like cookie dough. This small, hungry group of buyers quickly became known as Team Quest. Every time Tom wanted to do a product launch or product test, he would release it to Team Quest first. That way, there were raving fans ready to buy it the day it was ready. While Team Quest started as a small ragtag team of superfans, it evolved into a powerful group of buyers. That passionate audience took Quest products to the gym, to the office, and eventually onto the shelves of nearly every retail chain in the United States. That small, passionate group of buyers put Quest on the map and led them all the way to a major acquisition. In 2019, Quest sold for a cool $1 billion. Gee, I thought to myself, wouldn't it be nice if people would line up to buy my products? And that's exactly what can happen to you when you do a proper product launch. That first sale feeling. The excitement of your first sale never goes away. I've launched dozens of times, and I still get excited every time I launch a new business. I still get that first sale feeling. At this point in the 12-month process, after stacking the deck, there's no turning back. Understandably, there's some doubt and fear. You're wondering if any of it's going to work, if even one person is going to buy what you're selling. Believe me, when people do start buying, and they will, it's the most validating dopamine kick you can imagine. That first sale notification pops up and you think, I cannot believe this is actually happening. It gets even more amazing to see the names of people you don't recognize buying your product. People other than my mom actually like what I made. Your friends and family buy your product because you've been documenting it on social media and because people you've tagged as micro-influencers are buying and supporting your product, which is a great feeling. But it's an even better feeling when complete strangers start buying your product. That, my friend, is a real customer. Somebody who found you through some sort of advertising mechanism. That advertising mechanism could be as simple as seeing someone else posting about it on Facebook, or maybe they found you by searching Amazon. When you see that new, unrecognized, unfamiliar name, you'll smile. You'll look at your partner or your mom or your dog, and you'll say, in a whisper at first, I think I just made a real sale. That's when you're really in business. Every single one matters. In this stage of the process, every sale is vital, and every social share or review is a potential game changer. It's your job to ensure that the momentum doesn't die after those first exciting sales. It's your job to keep stoking that fire, and every inch gets stretched into a mile. That means winning over every customer, going above and beyond to your followers, and earning every review. One thing I've learned from my time with Gary Vaynerchuk is that every single person matters. Every comment you reply to can create a fan for life, and every customer who sings your praises can get the attention of the next major domino. Gary appreciates every share and every purchase from his audience. If a man beloved by millions is willing to get his hands dirty at the beginning of a new business, thanking his followers and going the extra mile for his customers, then you should expect the same from yourself. One slip at this stage of the process can undo much of your progress. One nasty review or one faulty product can set you back for months. That's why keeping the good faith of your customers and followers is so crucial at this stage of the game. If that sounds exhausting, take heart in the fact that the snowball builds quickly. For example, one retweet from the right person can bring in 10 new customers. One video testimonial can be turned into an ad that puts you on the map. One podcast mention can signal thousands of new superfans to pay attention to you. Every single step forward matters at this stage in the process. It's crucial to keep stoking the fire during and after launch. Since you've stacked the deck, the odds of success are in your favor. If you've built up buzz before launch, then the next few days will result in consistent sales every day. You'll be excited, busy, and scared all at the same time. Once the initial launch buzz dies down, usually 2 weeks or so after going live, you will likely see a normal pullback in your sales. Prepare yourself for this dip in sales. It's inevitable. You will probably freak out, but almost everyone has an initial drop in sales after the launch buzz wears off. That's where the real work starts. Stay the course. As you fulfill your promises, going above and beyond to make sure your customers are happy and turning sales into reviews, the snowball will start building and you will start to grow week over week. At first, it will feel like you are scratching and clawing for every odd sale. Then you'll sell a couple products every day, then 5 a day, then 10 a day, and on and on. The dopamine fluctuations during this time are indescribable. The highs are insanely high and the lows feel like death. I've seen people reach a consistent 10 sales a day mark within a week of their launch. I also see a lot of people who struggle right out of the gate. You'll feel tempted to think bigger if you're not seeing the progress you want. I encourage you to do the opposite. Go small. What is the smallest, simplest thing you can do to make a sale? At one point, I was doing weekly coaching calls with small groups of 25 to 50 new entrepreneurs. And one day, one of my students named Ken was on one of the calls, and he was talking about how he was getting his friends and family to buy, but he couldn't break through the hump. He was trying some marketing strategies to get the product to take off, but nothing was really clicking. I could tell right away that the reason Ken was struggling was because he was thinking too far out. He wasn't trying to go from 1 sale a day to 10 sales. He was trying to go from 1 to 100. Ken thought it would just magically happen if he'd done all of the steps in the process. Ken, I said, I'm going to give you an assignment. Your job is to come back here next week with 10 reviews on your product. I don't care how you do it, but come to the call next week with 10 reviews. I knew that get 10 reviews was a small enough task that he could figure it out. I also knew that if I gave him some big, complex strategy, he was going to continue to struggle. Do whatever you have to do to get those reviews, I said. If you have to order pizza 3 times a day and pitch each delivery guy on buying your product, then I guess you're going to have to eat a lot of pizza. But do not come back on this call without having 10 reviews. The next week, he waited until the end of the call before he spoke up. When it was his turn, he quietly and calmly reported on his progress. Well, I did what you told me to do. Okay, great. So what happened? Well, now I'm getting 7 to 10 sales a day from people I don't know. The rest of the group waited for him to celebrate, but he just looked blankly through my computer screen. What do I do now? He asked. Keep going, I told him, more excited for his success than he was. I think Ken was waiting for balloons to drop from the sky. The progress felt slow to him, but it was building. The snowball was rolling. It was just enough to get his product moving, and the momentum grew from there. Just a side note here, when I'm coaching a new entrepreneur, it's probably 80% of my job to get people to focus on what not to do rather than what they should do. You don't need to build a marketing strategy or hire the next person. Your job in this stage of the process is to just focus on getting a sale, getting small amounts of sales, getting reviews, building your audience, and doing the work that's necessary to build up that momentum. When I first got stuck at 5 sales a day, it felt like I was climbing a mountain with no support. It seemed like it was going to be an impossibly long journey. I recognize that you're at the base of that mountain too, and it feels like it's going to be an exhausting slog that takes forever. But when you've stacked the deck right and your brand starts to snowball after launch, that snowball builds more quickly than you'd think, and that momentum will continue as long as you keep the momentum going. You're in the people business now. I remember very well the time I got my first order from a repeat buyer. After buying 1 time, the same customer returned and made 3 more purchases. I was so curious, I felt compelled to pick up the phone and call him. He answered, and I just launched into it. Hey, my name's Ryan, and you bought my product on Amazon. I was just wondering if I could ask you how you found it and what you think. Ryan, he replied, I love your product. I wish I had recorded it because it would have made the best testimonial ever. I will never forget the feeling. Knowing somebody loved my brand and chose to come back to it was a game changer. That's when it truly hit home in a way that it hadn't really clicked before. That building a business is a people game, not a product game. Many internet entrepreneurs are historically guilty of optimizing for algorithms, numbers, and machines. thinking that they have to game the system somehow. The truth is, you're marketing to people, communicating with people. When you truly understand this, your marketing will get way more effective. You will be way more motivated to start gathering testimonials, responding to reviews, even when they're bad, and more personally engaging with your customers. You'll see sales aren't transactions, but relationships. That's the moment this becomes real. There's no such thing as a perfect launch.